Hi, I'm Steve Achram with Cella Building Company. Today we're going to be talking about the development process, going through development, design, pre-construction, construction, and operations. We're going to talk about sustainable design, smart design, and we're going to try to demystify all the intricacies of the integrated process.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owners Association, where real estate investors have found success since 1968. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group. This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 522. Every successful development starts long before the shovel hits the ground. From the proforma and capital stack to design, construction, and operations, it's a complex process that can define the success of a project. Joining me to unpack it all are Steve Achram and Peter Skornia from Cella Building Company in Grand Rapids, builders who believe in putting people and planet first. Their work combines sustainability, affordability, and community collaboration to create high-performing buildings that truly make a difference. Steve and Peter, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you.
Steve, why don't we start with you? Just give us a real quick background on Cella Building Company and where you're located and what you guys do.
Cella Building Company is located in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We're going to celebrate our 30th anniversary in 2026. Cella has always been people and planet first focused. And we believe our holistic approach to deliver sustainable, low-impact, high-performing buildings is a force for good, and we want to continue to accelerate that impact here in West Michigan and Michigan.
Peter, we're going to be using one of your projects as an example today to kind of walk people through the whole development process. And tell us a little bit about that project, Peter. It's on Wealthy and Sheldon right here in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, the project is Wealthy and Sheldon. It's a mixed-use project. There are 58 apartments, a mix of studios, ones and twos, and first floor commercial space. We purchased the property in 22, I think, and then went through the planning process and started construction in 23 and finished in 24.
We're going to go through every step of the way. Starting with, was this project, it's a project that Cella built, but did you do it on behalf of a different developer owner, or are you also an owner in this project as well?
I'm an owner in the project, but separate from Cella. And that's traditionally how we've done it. Cella is, at our core, a construction company. We design, build services, but then we've also done a fair amount of development for the ownership team of Cella, but with a mix of other partners. And that was the case on Wealthy and Sheldon. So I have two other partners, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit of the managing partners versus limited partners and those roles in a project.
So I would assume you were a managing partner.
Correct.
So Steve, I know that you talk to a lot of local developers here in West Michigan, and they come in to Cella and they say, okay, I have land that I'd like to build on, but I don't know how to get started. What do you, Steve, what do you do? What's the first step you want to take when those people come to you?
The first thing that we do is we listen to what their goals are. We understand what variables are important to them and what they're trying to get out of the development and assess whether it's the highest and best use for that piece of property. We also, because we have developed, designed, and built our own projects, we've purchased land, we've owned and operate, we explain the process, we guide them through the full process. We feel that we're able to illuminate all of the tasks that are Cella driven and all of the tasks that are owner driven. And so we've got a process that goes through development, design, pre-construction, construction, and then hand the keys over for operations. I think the linchpin of everything starts at two things. One is the financial model, the pro forma, and two is the concept plan. Does the concept plan meet the highest and best use? Does it meet the goals of the developer? Does it meet the priorities of the municipality? And does the pro forma work? And does the pro forma return have a return of investment? And as you go through the design process, you further along that concept plan, you further along some of those entitlements, you do more due diligence, you have more refined construction budget, you put those variables back in the pro forma and make sure that the pro forma still works before you put a shovel in the ground. You've got firm costs for construction, you've got awareness of revenue that you're going to receive from the units. And so you have all of the variables, you understand all the contingency and risk, so that pro forma is then bulletproof, and that return is also, armored with knowledge.
What is the duration? Like, how long does it take to do both of those things? I mean, the highest and best use is so key. You want to make sure that if you're going to build an apartment building there, that is the best location to build an apartment building, and not, say, a self-storage facility or an office building. But the pro forma, it seems like to get those numbers and really dial it in, you have to go out and get a lot of information from a lot of subcontractors, providers, and distributors. How long does it take to put together a rock solid pro forma? And Peter, I'll let you answer that one.
It's very much an iterative process, right? I think Steve explained that so well, of first defining that concept plan and a pro forma that works, that ties these things together. And then, and you do that very early on. We can do that really in a matter of days. But then from that process on, it's, again, this iterative process of validating all of those details and figuring out all of that stuff. There's a lot of steps through that with all of the phases, right? Of getting land under control. What is that process going to be? Verifying planning and zoning, having a good understanding of what the capital stack looks like, and validating that. Are there grants involved? Where is debt coming from? What are the terms around that debt? How much is that going to fluctuate? So to answer your question, the first step of coming up with a concept plan and a pro forma that tie together, that process can happen very quickly. But then the whole process can take, upwards of a year to 18 months, depending on the project. They can come together faster, certainly, but in the case of Wealthy and Sheldon, it was about a year.
When you say the whole process, do you mean like construction until you have a finished building, or?
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. No, I was saying up to a year to get to the point where you're starting construction.
What else is involved in that year? You get that pro forma, and okay, the numbers work. Let's move forward. What do you do next?
A lot of things happening simultaneously. So with the pro forma, validating sources and uses. So on the sources side, what is your capital stack going to look like, and confirming all of those things. And we generally group that into three buckets of equity. Equity can be cash brought in, or it can be value in the land if somebody already owns the land. Grants, and there's a number of different incentives. And from a capital stack standpoint, though, it's grants. It is dollars that are going to come into the project, as opposed to dollars that you would get back maybe from property tax incentives over the life of the project. And then the last one is debt. And with those three buckets, those can grow. You may have multiple sources that come into the equity. You can have different partners coming in. You may have multiple grants that apply, and potentially multiple debt sources that come in to make up that overall capital stack. So that's a process, putting all of that stuff together and validating it. At the same time, we want to be taking that concept plan and then working through the design process, getting into schematic design, getting into really finalizing, do the assumptions that we made in our concept plan and our pro forma, are they still valid? Can we get this number of units in this square footage? Does the size of the building, does the number of stories, does that all still make sense? And then we move into design development, really start to vet out those details. At that point, we will get subcontractors engaged, start to validate our pricing. And then finally, we're into construction documents and we've gone through the planning process with the city, and then getting ready for building permits to the point that, okay, now we're ready to start construction.
I'll just add that each site has its own set of puzzle pieces where you start while the proforma is evolving, while the capital stack is evolving, while the design is evolving. You're also, one of the first tasks that you need to do is your site due diligence. Like I said, all sites are unique. And so you've got zoning review, you need to do environmental site assessments, you need to do geotech investigation, you need to get title commitments to see if there are any easements. If you're doing work in rural areas, you might want to, well, you'll need to find out if there's any pipelines that go through the project, or railroads, or utility easements. You will need to review all the zoning codes, the zoning ordinances. What type of facade does the local AHJ, which is the municipality, what do they require? What parking requirements do they have? What stormwater requirements do they have? What uses are allowed? Do they need special land use? Those all require time and resources and effort to understand and also get approval for.
So if someone comes to you with a piece of land, how much hand-holding do you do to walk them through that process? Or do you just do that for them and that's part of your job? Because I can see a lot of listeners saying, wow, I've got land I'd like to develop, but there's no way I'm going to do all these things. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say that's our role.
Our team has expertise and the experience and the passion to go through all of that effort, from development, the financial workflow, the due diligence workflow, the design workflow, and the budgeting workflow to get it ready for construction. And then we manage the construction as well. So that's where we come in. Again, because we've bought property, we've developed it, we've gone through this process, we've held on to the asset. We can take the property owner through the process as their advocate, as an experienced owner and investor. We can make the process, we'll do all the work. We only ask that, they engage with biweekly meetings as we go through the design and in the budgeting and the proforma, that they set up an LLC for that project, that they're the approval of decision-making milestones throughout the process.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB & Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. Going back to the grants and the incentives, I mean, it's very expensive to get development done nowadays. In fact, it's almost impossible. How important is the grants, like the state, the federal grants, the TIF, brownfield, NEZ incentives. How important is that to actually getting a project out of the ground?
It's critical with the cost of construction that has gone up, cost of development in general that has gone up over the last 5 or 6 years. That's really outpaced rent. I think we hit a time about 5 or 6 years ago where they were in balance. You could do a new project really without grants, without incentives upfront. Putting in 20% equity between land and cash in a deal, you could borrow up to 80% at reasonable, you'd find reasonable, but reasonable interest rates to a project with cash flow. A proforma would work very well. But since that time, development costs have gone up 60 to 80%, while rents have only gone up 10 to 20%. So that's created that gap that we really need incentives for. And incentives vary depending on the project.
How familiar are you at Cella with those incentives? And is that something you can also help a developer access and learn about?
Again, with doing our own development, we've gone through that process, and they change over the years, right? We just have the new state budget in Michigan in October, so that's changed the format a little bit for what state grants are available. Here in Grand Rapids, we have what's called an emerging developer grant, which has been a fantastic new tool where we've worked with a lot of emerging developers. And that's critical to the capital stack because it is a grant that comes in, but it's also critical for the risk that a new developer has to take on. That helps them on the front end. With the city shares some of the risk of getting a project started and doing all of those activities that Steve just went through to get a project launched.
And that's in the city of Grand Rapids, right?
That's in the city of Grand Rapids, yeah.
So because we have a lot of investors or listeners in Grand Rapids, I think I want to stress what you just said. If you are an emerging developer, which I think there's certain criteria, but it basically means you're a new time developer. This is your first development. The city will actually put up some of that upfront money that needs to be spent on all the things that you just mentioned, to cover those costs, because it can be quite costly to get the engineering, the architectural, hire an attorney to help you with what, on the contracts and everything. So that emerging developer grant, from my understanding, covers a lot of those costs. Is that correct?
It does, yeah. It covers a lot of those pre-construction activities.
Is there an amount to which it covers?
The max, as we understand, is $200,000. So that's a pretty good sized project, though, to get you far enough along that you have a schematic design. You've done the site due diligence that Steve was referring to, the geotech. You've done a phase 1, a phase 2 if needed. You're far enough along with design that you can be pretty sure that, yeah, we're going to be able to build it for this, and enough information to be able to go to a bank and make a presentation and say, is this a good project for you? And you can shop that with different banks, as well as not finalize all of the grants and incentives, but far enough along that you've had the discussions with the various agencies and you've gotten your applications in and you're on the right track. It gets you a good way into the process.
So we've talked about the pre-development. Everything that goes into before you get into the ground. So you cover all those bases, and it's time to go. You've got your capital stack in place. What happens next?
That's the really fun part. That's why Steve and I got into this business, is we love building things, right? And that's what I love about the development process of identifying a need. And right now, certainly in Grand Rapids, and I think in a lot of places around the country, there is a need for housing. And how can we help crack that nut? How can we help balance all of the needs around the cost of land, cost of construction, the cost of financing, all of that front stuff, with providing affordable housing? And for us, we define affordable housing as being in that somewhere a little below 80% AMI. We'll throw out another acronym there to 100, maybe a little over 100% AMI. And for the projects that we've been doing in the city, that also lines up with market rate. with what people that are moving into apartments can afford.
And AMI being area median income. So it's basically what is the average of what people are making. Talk about the construction process. What happens when the cranes and the all the subs show up on site to start building?
Like Peter said, this is the whole process is fun, but when we get to build stuff, that's when the Lego builder kid in us comes out. And so we like to do what we can do is a groundbreaking ceremony. We install the soil erosion and sedimentation control plans. We mobilize equipment. We put in the trailer, the staging, the gravel for the staging areas. We order all of the long lead time equipment. If something takes 6 to 12 months from order to delivery, we've got to make sure that our schedule is built that we order that right away. Like an elevator is a good example that's got a long lead time. And so we order all those long lead time items, and we come up with a safety plan, and we execute on each. We hire all the subcontractors and we execute all of the subs. So we start from the site work. We then excavate the foundations, and we build up from there. And we're driving towards drying in the building so that we get the roof in, the windows in, the doors, the sheathing. We get the building dried in, so then we can start with the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection subs so that they can start to do their work. We can drywall. We can then put the finishing touches in, like cabinetry and tile and carpet and paint. And then as we've executed through all that, we're also managing the budget. We're managing the schedule. We're providing updates. We are then one of the last things that we do with the owners, we go through a punch list walk. If any touch-up painting needs to happen, any trim work, any mechanical system commissioning needs to happen to make sure that those are all working properly, and that we're training the owner operator how to use all those systems. And then we hand over the keys. That is also a very fun milestone when we get to hand over the keys. And at the very, very end, one of the things that I think we pride ourselves on, because we are owners of property and operators, is we'll go through every material and sub and labor has at least a 1 year workmanship warranty. So we'll go through and we'll do a 11-month warranty walk where we walk with the owner, and they can say, hey, this might not be working properly. We'll just make sure that we're walking them through the whole building, so that if there's any warranty items prior to that 1 year expiration, we can get it handled and taken care of.
You just went through all this with the Wealthy and Sheldon project. Is it exactly how Steve just described, or did you experience any obstacles or complications along the way?
We certainly experienced obstacles and complications, but it is just exactly how Steve outlined it. Having those regular meetings throughout the process, addressing issues as they come up. We were fortunate in that project overall. We had a really good group of contractors. We did some new things for us on that project. It was an all steel building, this 4-story building, but we did cold formed metal steel wall panels. So they were manufactured off-site. The speed of that was amazing. That was a real strong suit for us. That we had a lot of issues with the soil on that project. It's been continuously occupied for the last couple hundred years. All kinds of uses. So there's a lot of stuff in the soil that needed to be dug out. That process took a long time. So we could be building the whole wall system while all that work was going on. And that really sped it up. We did some things with kitchen cabinets that were new to us, of getting flat packed cabinets. So there were some cool opportunities that we could do on that project. And that's a good size project for us, 60 units that not so big that, boy, we're really taking a risk by trying something new, but big enough to get the impact of, hey, how can we make this process better? So again, getting to that blend of design and construction with being a design build contractor and having the responsibility of getting things built, assembled, in place, in time. We use that information to feed back into the design process. So we're thinking ahead to, boy, what's the most efficient way to build this thing? Efficient from a construction standpoint, efficient from a space standpoint, and ultimately something that people are going to want to live in, that there's amenities that people will like and make the building lease up.
Steve, sustainable has kind of become a buzzword in development. And I think it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but how do you actually put that into practice when you're doing this kind of development?
That's where we really have a passion for low impact, green, smart design. I think it all starts with the smart design. So there's components of sustainable design, which can be thought of as green, right? You can have the right thermal envelope. You can have the right low impact, high energy efficient mechanical systems. You can offset some energy usage with either renewable energy credits or renewable energy within the structure. But it's also we like to think of it as also just sustainable design as far as, is it close to public transportation? Is there community equity? Like if the people that live in the neighborhood are the ones developing and having equity in the project, we think that is, the more sustainable approach versus maybe an outsider coming in and developing what they think is appropriate. So it's sustainable means a whole bunch of different things, not only just green development.
Peter, going back to your Wealthy and Sheldon development, where are you in that process? Is it all done and leased up, or are you still in the lease up phase? And how is leasing going for you?
The leasing is going well. We're fully leased on the residential side, nothing yet on the commercial side. So that's been a struggle in Grand Rapids now. There are a lot of vacant spaces, so we're still looking for retail tenants. But on the residential side, the one, and we knew this, it was just the nature on the front end of getting the project financed. And by the time we got the project started, we finished it in the fall, and people just don't move as much in the fall. So we had a kind of a tough winter that first year of not being fully occupied, but by April or maybe May of the following year, we were fully leased up.
How would people in the West Michigan area, because that's your area, how would they get a hold of you, find out more about your business? And if they have land that they're thinking of developing, how would they reach out and find out more?
I would encourage anybody with property that they're looking to remodel or properties that they want to develop into something new to go to our website, cellagr.com, CELLAGR.com. And they can also reach me at SACHRAM@cellagr.com. I would encourage you to reach out.
We're recording this right now in October of 2025. This will come out the first week of January of 2026. And you're also going to be doing a webinar for the RPOA. Can you say a few words about that? Because I think the timing will be pretty good, where this will be a good driver to people who might want to check out your webinar and get more information and ask some follow-up questions.
We're very excited to speak and do a webinar with the RPOA. It's still in planning, and we're planning to talk about sustainable development, how sustainability drives the return on investment.
Thanks for coming on the show today and talking about development and the whole, taking us through the whole process. I think it's appropriate that this is coming out the first of the year, because if you're making New Year's resolutions and some land that you're thinking of developing, hopefully this will spur some of our listeners to actually get in the game and start helping to provide affordable and attainable housing, which is why we wanted to host this episode in the first place. So thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and your expertise. I really had a fun time talking with both of you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, Brian. This has been great.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.